Start recording. All right, welcome to our, it seems like this is the ninth Thursday in a row for us. Next week we will take a break. And then in December we'll have a couple. January we'll have 2 or 3 as well. So I wish you guys all a happy Thanksgiving. Most of all, be healthy. Some news this week. A lot of you had clamored for me to get Dr. Lawrence Hogan, who wrote a whole book about the clubhouse man, and he had spoken at one of our meetings years ago. He is going to be speaking to us in January. Good. Besides the book, he's also an authority on the Negro Leagues. He's a really, really bright guy, great guy. He had some health issues a few years back, and he seems to have recovered from them. So we'll get something straight with him. Dan, who's on board, is going to be speaking probably in February about the shooting at the Polo Grounds. He's an authority on that. So we have some good things up ahead. Today, we're going to hear from George Gregor. George wrote this fabulous book called From COOGAN'S BLUFF to Baseball by the Bay. They Were Giants. You cannot get this in any store. George will explain how he goes about writing the books, and I assume self-publishing them as well, but he'll be the one to inform us about that. George, let's see. I think you can do whatever you need to do with your screen when the time comes.
Yeah.
But George, you know, we thank you for coming aboard, and the floor is yours. George Gregor.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Giant fans, and Mo, who's somewhat of a Giant fan, he'll admit it. Well, this presentation in this book is different from everything else. For one thing, I'm an author without being a writer. Although I was an English major at one time before I went back to school and got an MBA, and it was on those long trips to Hong Kong and Tokyo and wherever, Singapore, that I tried to find something to do other than playing Kasparov chess or watching 3 movies on my way to Sydney and eat consecutive breakfasts. The first book was inspired by an old friend of mine who was a Wall Street lawyer, Jerry Fernandez, who's now retired in Florida. Jerry was an old Brooklyn Dodger fan when I was a Giant fan, but we were good friends. He was really an old Brooklyn Dodger fan because he went to games in the 30s. And he told me stories about old Giants from the 30s, like Malott and people whose names aren't household names. But back around 1994, Jerry wrote a 9-line poem in the style that I preserved over the years. And the gist of his poem was that Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth were great and belonged in the Hall of Fame. And he handed this piece of paper out to some friends, including me, and I wrote him a rebuttal. My rebuttal was 9 pages long, and the gist of my rebuttal was that that's nice, but there are players who'll never make the Hall of Fame, but who've done things that make baseball the national pastime. Things like the player traded for himself, the man who got 2 hits in the same day in 2 different cities, the only pitcher who faced both Babe Ruth and Mickey Mantle, people that had 1 at bat in the major leagues and got hit by a pitch. And I don't mean Moonlight Graham. This is less than Moonlight Graham, or even Nick Testa. So I wrote this thing, wasn't a book, but I called it A Ride on the Mendoza Line, which did mature into a book in due course. Now it's a book. I kept adding to it, and for many years it got stuck at 79 pages. Then I had lunch with Art Shamsky a couple of times in New York at a private club where I happened to be the president on Wall Street. And Shamsky said, "Oh, this is great. You got to publish this." I said, "No, I'm writing it on long flights. I'm not even paying a lot of attention to the style." So, and then I told Shamsky, "You know, you're in the book, but I have Shamsky. I don't have Art. I have you mixed up with Clendenin and Swoboda." And Art said to me, "Remember what I did?" I said, "What was that?" "Well, he had 4 home runs in a row. And he hit those home runs in games that he didn't start. And in the 5th game, he got a pinch hit and he didn't start that. He got 2 of his home runs were in extra innings of the same game. And I think he did that for Cincinnati, not for the Mets." So I went home and I embellished it and I gave him 8 lines in the poem instead of just a mention. And then I kept adding to it. And other people prodded me to keep working on it. And I said, "Well, I write in the Mendoza line. I can't go over 200 pages, obviously. Well, it's actually 400 pages now because I've got a lot of footnotes, which adds to the story." And the write of the Mendoza line is not peculiar or particular to any one team. My next 4 books, the last of which is the one dedicated to the Giants, and the ones in between, which are in succession, those amazing Mets from worst to verse, because it's also an epic poem, although a shorter one because the Mets go back to 1962, not 1863. The 3rd book was a real opus. It's 2 books in one. It's the Chicago Cubs and Mo. Half of this book is the life story of Mo Resner with photographs, lots of them. So it's expensive. I will talk about Mo in a while. My next book was Red Sox, the Bo Sox of Beantown. I have too many Red Sox fans who pleaded, just like my godson and my brother pleading with me to do the Yankees. Maybe I will when I turn 100 years old, and I'll finish it when I'm 120. But I had to get to the Giants before it got too late for me. So the beauty of the pandemic is that this year I was able to go back and complete something I started about 2 years ago. And that's this book here. Every one of these books has a common characteristic. Each page is dedicated to a year, as Gary may have mentioned in his email. At the bottom of each page is the typical lineup, other hitters, other pitchers, how the team did. In the beginning of the book, I write a little introduction about the team, the franchise, and a capsule history. Then I have some things like "Did you know?" or you know, the first and only, that kind of thing. And they all have that. The only book of the group of the 5 that has any kind of commercial distribution is the one that Mo helped me write, because over a period of some years, he would send me emails from the day he was born until the last game that finished last night, and I converted that into a running autobiography, and his book followed 3 paths because Mo is 3 men in one: entertainment, finance, and sports. I met Mo through finance, and then learned that he was a baseball fan. And when I told him I'm writing baseball books, and I think I'll do the Cubs, he said, "Let me do the introduction." I said, "Okay." Little did I know that his introduction would keep this book going for about 3 years before it was finally finished after the Cubs won the World Series. And in fact, on January 15, 2017, the first copy of this book was purchased by Sandy Koufax, who was waiting for it from the previous Christmas. Koufax also gave my Mets book to Wilpon, who went to high school with him in Lafayette, as you all know, in Brooklyn. He also gave a copy to George W. Bush at a game in Texas when the Rangers, I mean, the other guy, when the Texas was playing in one of the playoff games. So, but commercially, the only book that we're actually trying to sell is the one that Mo has an interest in. And Mo is the best salesman. I don't have time to play with this. I also would rather, I don't charge friends for the book, and I don't want to deal with the IRS, but, reporting, $3 or $5 profit. It's not worth it. I do it for fun, and I'm not a professional, writer. But this makes me an author because I'm published for what it's worth. And I think I'm pretty good. And I have a facility for putting a lot of these ideas into verse, which amazes me sometimes. I was walking from lunch with Jerry Fernandez down on Wall Street one day, and I said, Jerry, people are calling me. I get a call from Cincinnati, and the guy says, my wife said you left out Richie Scheinblum. All right, so I put in Richie Scheinblum, just like I put in Shamsky. I said, I'm not putting any more names in unless they come with a story. So Jerry told me the story of Shanty Hogan and how John McGraw used to try very hard to control the man's weight. And some of you might know the Shanty Hogan story. You might. But McGraw couldn't bribe the waiters any more than Hogan could. But Hogan has some great years. He's the first man to have 3 triple plays in the same game. Back in 1931, it was matched in 1999. He was a pretty good ball player, and so these stories is what I really wanted to get in. My interest in doing this is to uncover little tidbits of history. So you might say trivia, baseball trivia is found in my books, especially the first one, the Ride on the Mendoza line, more than the books that are dedicated to specific teams, Red Sox, Cubs, Giants, and Mets. Will I do another one? If I do another one, it probably would be the Yankees, but this takes time, takes a lot of effort. And I just got finished updating through 2020. I haven't finished all of them, but all 4 teams need to be updated. Mo and I just finished the 5th edition because every time Mo uncovers in his closet a picture of him with red buttons, Henny Youngman said, you got to put this in. So, or Bud Harrelson, he and Bud Harrelson both wore number 3. Anyway, so that's the story there. But when I talk about uncovering, little tidbits. I mean, you all know that Hoyt Wilhelm hit a home run in his first at bat. And you probably all can guess that it was Joe Youngblood who got 2 hits in the same day. But, some of these things that the affected players who played for the Giants at one time. Joe Heaving was the only grandfather in the major leagues when he played in 1930, 31. Cannonball Crane back in 1884 threw a ball 405 feet. That's how he got his nickname. Bump Hadley, a Giant pitcher, before he came to the Giants, surrendered Ty Cobb's last hit. The last home run hit by a New York Giant. Can you guess?
He just
It wasn't Dusty Rhodes.
Nobody knows. Wow. Was it Lockman? I don't know.
No. Whoever it is died like 3 years ago. I remember seeing that.
I think he did die. It was Gail Harris who went to Detroit, right?
Right.
Hey, George, let me ask you something. You've been a member of this organization a long time. Why? How did you become associated with the Giants?
Well, I grew up in the Bronx, as Mo did, except I grew up as a Giant fan for some reason, and he grew up as a Cub fan. I think I traced it. I traced my history to the middle of 1955 when I was 10. And there was a kid in my public school. His name was Peter. And I remember him regaling me with stories of the New York Giants, John McGraw, Christy Mathewson, those guys. And then I saw Willie Mays, and he told me about Willie Mays. So I had no vision for Mickey Mantle or Duke Snyder or any other guys. I was stuck on the Giants, and we took the crosstown bus, 163rd Street bus to the Polo Grounds, and went to games. And my first game, my father took me in '56 to see the Giants play the Dodgers. They beat the Dodgers 6-5. I still remember sitting in left field behind Whitey Lockman. I remember Campanella lining a solid hit to left. Giants, I think, hit 2 or 3 home runs. I think Ray Cott may have hit a home run. Maybe. Yeah. So I became a Giant because someone persuaded me. Same as Mo. Mo met a friend who told him about the Cubs and took him to a game where he saw Lenny Marullo. So once you're stuck, you know, they moved to California. I was one who didn't give up on them. I do root for the Mets because they're here. I like to see them win. But when the Mets play the Giants, it's got to be the Giants. When they moved in 1957-8, it took me 10 years to catch up with them, because when I got out of school and was going into the Army and couldn't get into a graduate school and we got married, my parents gave us a little car, and I had a month to kill before I had to go in for my physical down at Whitehall Street. So I took out the baseball schedule, the national schedule, and we plotted a trip from coast to coast and back. I told my wife, we can go to the Astrodome in Houston, or we can go to the Grand Canyon. Here's a hint. Willie Mays ain't playing in the Grand Canyon. So we went to Houston. We did see her uncle in the Army in Fort Hood while we were in Texas. And we saw my brother in the Air Force in Wichita Falls. But it was interesting. Houston, Texas is so big that while we were driving through Texas, the Giants were playing the Astros 4 games. And Jimmy Wynn hit 3 home runs in one of those games. And we got to see, I think, the 3rd game. And we got to the game. We bought a ticket during the day. It was pouring rain, but it was the Astrodome. Mays was not in the lineup. Ty Klein was playing center field, and Mays was rested. I told my wife, watch the scoreboard. Now, this was a novelty. I hope it doesn't happen, but if an Astro hits a home run, watch the scoreboard. Sure enough, in the 2nd or 3rd inning, Dave Justy hits a home run to put Houston ahead 2-0, and the scoreboard blows up. In the 5th or 6th inning, Jim Ray Hart hits a home run, and nothing happens. Just done it. Willie Mays comes in to pinch hit with the bases loaded in the 7th inning, and he strikes out, hits into a double play, but stays in the game. Mays comes up again in the 9th inning with the bases loaded and does nothing. The game goes into extra innings. Now it's tied 2-2. In the 12th inning, Mays comes up with the bases loaded, and they bring in Barry Latman, big guy who's about 6'2". Latman throws 2 pitches. The second pitch, Mays hits a line drive off the sidewall in left field, grand slam. The scoreboard reads, fasten your seatbelts. This is your captain speaking. We're passing through a turbulent zone. I told this story to Joe Garagiola at the Greenbrier Hotel when I was sponsoring him as a speaker when I was at Citibank a long time, in 1985. And he and I, we had dinner with our wives, other bankers, but there was a dialogue between Joe and me. I said, Joe, I have a picture of you on the '54 World Series team, you know, because he did have a cup of coffee with the Giants, as you probably know. And he was telling us stories. Oh yeah, DeRocha was not a great guy to work for. There was a day when the Giants were playing and they were down in the batting order, and DeRocha starts pacing the dugout, saying, I need a pinch hitter. I need a pinch hitter. Garagiola says, I'm the only position player left on the team. He knew his days were numbered. When I told him the story about Barry Latman at the Astrodome during our honeymoon, He said, he told a story about Barry Latman. He said one day, the manager came out to take him out, and Latman, who's about 6 foot, he could have been 6'4", was standing on the mound like this, and Joe said, "Barry, you're not so tough. Why are you stationing yourself like that?" I said, "Joe, I had a hot dog in the dugout. I got mustard on my shirt." He didn't want the manager to see it. So we spent the dinner with Garagiola trading stories about the Polo Grounds, and I mean, it's more him telling me stories and my listening to what he was saying. So we got to San Francisco, and Cepeda beat the Giants to a home run in Candlestick Park. By then, he had been traded to St. Louis. The Sadecki trade was not a lot of fun, but those things happen, you know. And it was tough to have McCovey and Cepeda on the same team. But I went through the years of Les Skyder. I turned on the radio one day in April of 1958, and there was a game going on. I didn't know that it was scheduled, but it was Les Skyder doing a recreation of Ruben Gomez shutting out the Dodgers, known as the Bums in those days. And so there, I spent 2 years listening to Les Skyder under the covers, recreating Giant games from San Francisco and elsewhere. But that continued. I never relaxed my following. You know, it's not, those of you who are in that age group, when your team was yanked away and you were 10, 11, 12 years old, know what that feels like. But, you know, you get over it. Shit happens, but you get over it. Hi, Perry.
So George, let me ask you something. You know, you were gracious enough to send me a copy of the book, and I went through it. And for those who don't know, every year of the Giants franchise is in this book, in verse from 1883 all the way to 2020. George, you wanna read one from like 51 or 54, and give them a sampling of what this is about?
To get you into the mood, I'd like to read the very first thing I wrote, which would have been 1994, in the ride on the Mendoza line. Okay, and this is like a note to trivia. It reads as follows, and I'll just read you about 8 lines. Ride with me now on memory's wing, and join in an ode for true fans to sing on a road that's without any clear post or sign, and meet those who've traveled the Mendoza line. This ode is about those who struggled and toiled, and separates heroes from mortals who, foiled by fate that bestowed them with marginal skills, soon passed from the scene, some over the hills. And no, that is not for the casual fan who does not know Al from Billy Moran, of players obscure and some somewhat famous, from Bobo Belinsky to Pedro Ramos. And this goes on for 400 pages, whatever. You can have a lot of fun with it.
So why doesn't my picture come on? Could you tell me?
Whose picture?
Don't worry about it.
As far as the Giants, I can bring up, well, I'll tell you what. There's a page for 1957, then there's a break with some pictures drawn from Mo's video, and then there's 1958. I can read you well, let me read you what happened when the Giants left. You don't need to hear the whole thing.
Well, I think a lot of the guests want to hear the names of these people in those years. So maybe you should do 57, pick whatever year you want.
All right, well, in 57, the next season was a repeat of the last, and Stoneham no longer looked at the past. He and O'Malley had simply decided that California, the future, provided. Giants had even thought that Tampa would be the best place, and some thought real good, to get their own team with big league credentials. But just like Toronto, there were few essentials. On the field, Mays was still the star flower, with Danny O'Connell, Ray Cott, and Hank Sauer. At Phoenix, they had young men they would get, but bring them up now? No way, and not yet. So Kirkland, Cepeda, and Davenport too had to wait out to see what they do. And many fans felt the Giants could not have a good season. If that's true, what rot. So Jabo, Jablonski, Don Mueller, Gail Harris played well enough not to embarrass. And they even brought back the old Flying Scott just to appease the faithful. More rot. Most of the pitchers still in their prime were poised to get through this year, past the time, then move on to the west and out by the bay, where many of them would continue to play. All the arrangements by Giants and Dodgers, by town politicians and owners and codgers, to ready a move that made no one happy. Back in New York, don't get me sappy, on Polo Grounds turf on October day, some fans came out, had little to say, except some moved by a final dash dream, beseeching one more time, please, don't go team. And then you go into 1957 or 58, and it's spring April day on Seal Stadium grass. My team relocated. I just thought, alas. And facing the bums in the very first game before many curious new fans who came. Les Kiter announced a game recreated. Back home, Giants fans felt they'd been castrated. As Ruben Gomez started that first game on the coast, and he had games worse. Gomez shut out the new team from LA, which wouldn't live to play another day, as the very next game would go to the bums and had their new fans banging the drums. In San Francisco, new players would land. Orlando Cepeda would rewrite the brand, and Jim Davenport and catcher Bob Schmidt. These Giants showed they could field and could hit. Hank Sauer, now older, Willie Kirkland, younger, shared Giants outfield. Both were among the names old and new, including Bob Speak, as Rigney, the skipper, solutions would seek. Phasing out Lockman and Eddie Brissou, the Giants brought up Felipe Alou, the first of three brothers whom we would soon see. One day on the field, they would play all three. The first team out west would finish in third. Back in New York, we just only heard and noted the names who used to play here, like John Antonelli, whom we still held dear. Out there, Willie Mays was somehow resented, as fans went for new names that were presented. So it was the baby bull, Orlando Cepeda, around whom the legends we'd see would soon be made of. It goes on and on, so you can read these things for yourselves. But anyway, so that's kind of that's the verse style that I maintained for 20
How does
years.
one go about getting this book, Gary or Greg?
Well, if anybody wants any of my books, you gotta send me an email. And you can send it to Gregor, Gregor105 at AOL.com. Gregor.
GGR. And what's the number?
It's 105.
After the R?
After the R, it's 105. It's Gregor105
At AOL.
at AOL.
Okay.
But yeah, no,
How are you able to do this for over 100 years, more than 130 years, say, of the franchise? I mean, 1863, and I mean to 2020. That's how much research was put into this.
well, it takes a little, but I enjoy that part of it because it keeps me sane. It keeps my mind off business and other things that are going on out there. Let me see what's on.
There you go.
Can you see this?
Yes, we can.
I'm going to run through some slides. Some of them, well, I'll explain them as we go through. Let's hope it works. So this is the cover. The bottom photo was provided by Richard Young, friend in San Mateo. I had been to the ballpark, but
George, I think if you click on the first one,
yeah,
it might be an arrow
yeah,
that will continue it.
This is the second one. Can you see Bill Rigney?
Why don't you click on it to make it bigger?
What about your photos?
What I'm saying is, I think if you click on the Bill Rigney photo, it will enlarge.
Well, I did.
We just see a little picture of it.
I see it fairly large though. How about this one?
Maybe it's me, unless everybody else is just seeing a little
We
bit.
see the small squares, that's all we see, but
Yeah.
that's all right.
With A, B,
I'm
C.
both are very, yeah, the same pictures, yeah.
Okay, it's fine then.
Is that larger?
No.
No, just keep it the way it is then. So we're on picture B.
All right, Mo is with a fellow named Gus Fischel. Gus Fischel is a descendant of Leo Fischel. Leo Fischel was a Giant for one day in 1899. He pitched one game, a complete game, which he lost. He then quit baseball and went to Columbia Law School. This fellow, Gus Fischel, is a retired lawyer, and we went to the law firm in Babylon, Long Island. I said, Mo, you and I are going to Babylon, and we're going to bring a ball, and you're going to sign it to Leo Fischel's ancestor, great-grandson, or whoever he is, Gus Fischel. And we're going to give him a ball. So the ball that Mo signed in honor of Leo Fischel. Leo Fischel was also the first Jewish pitcher in the major leagues. And he had a proverbial cup of coffee because he appeared in one game. Can you see the ball?
Yes,
Can you see this?
What?
All right, Mark Melanson came to the stair dedication
get him out of the book.
a couple of years ago, and he was a very friendly guy. And
Yeah,
just like I
but
root for Panic, I root for Melanson, except when he pitches against the Giants.
Except when he pitched for the Giants too.
Yeah, and he has Madison Bumgarner if you like them.
Yeah, he pitched. He came. The Giants were in New York when Melanson was the only player to come to the stairs,
Yeah,
and he sincerely wanted to know about the history of the team.
and now he's part of it.
2 days later, he got injured.
Yeah, I know. This is the first book. This was the third.
Hey, George, I think it'd be easier when you're describing the picture. Tell us what letter you're talking about. Okay?
Oh, these are lettered.
Yeah. The Mendoza cover, for example, is F.
Well, I put them in order, A through Z.
Right.
This-
So the Mendoza is letter F.
Have you tried double clicking on the pictures? It might make them bigger.
But I just did. It's bigger. It's bigger for me right now. Can you not see it?
We see it. It's just not huge. So
No.
It's all right.
it's fine.
For some reason, I see it very clearly and large.
Yeah. I do too. Yeah.
That's because you're in all the pictures, Mo.
Ah,
Okay. This is the book that is one half Mo's autobiography, his entertainment career, his sports career, and his finance career. Mo has thrown out the first pitch at Wrigley Field. He's thrown out the first pitch in Knoxville at the AA Smokies twice. He wasn't that treated nicely in Iowa by the AAA team. That's unfortunate. By the way, Mo Resner is the second oldest man after Satchel Paige to sign his first professional major league players contract. And this is a copy of it, 1978 with the Montreal Expos. Signed him for a reason, but he never was called in to pitch in a major league game, at least not yet. He's still young. Mo, on the last day that the Giants played in the Polo Grounds, Mo had the presence of mind, and only Mo, to bring a movie camera to the Polo Grounds, and he took a video, not of the game. Most of the stuff of interest is before the game. 50 years later, he was persuaded to take it out of mothballs, and with the help of Perry Barber and some other folks, they produced his DVD. Perry, as I understand it, wrote a song and sings it in this video, right, Perry? Perry, are you there? Can't hear her.
Maybe
This is
maybe
a
she
scene.
stepped away.
This was a pregame scene that Mo took at the Polo Grounds. This was the old bullpen.
I can't see it, but doesn't matter.
Wait a second. Okay, Bobby Thompson was pointing to the left field stands when Mo was on the field with him.
Well,
You know who that is? Mays and Rhodes. Can you see Mays and Rhodes?
yeah,
Mays. This is from the Boston book that got in here. I couldn't play with the slides for some reason.
hey, can I tell him how I got on the field?
Sure. And you were the last man to leave.
Yeah, well, that's right. I was the last one to leave the Polo Grounds. When I went to the game, nobody wanted to go with me. I didn't know it was the last day in the history of the New York Giants. And the guy at near the box seats knew me. And he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm taking movies." He says, "Come on the field." I wound up on the field taking pictures of ceremonies. And I was also on the field during the game. And I got some great shots, including Willie Mays' last base hit at the Polo Grounds. I was lucky with that. It was a great thing meeting everybody. And that's how it happened.
Ruben Gomez.
Yeah, Ruben. He was quite a guy.
Valmy Thomas. Gomez and Thomas were traded for Jack Sanford.
Where does he see this?
I think you have George. You have Sid Gordon. His son Mike is with us tonight.
Okay, well, Sid Gordon, yeah. We had Hans Lobert back here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hans Lobert was the guy who raced, that's Hank Sauer. Hans Lobert raced a horse around the bases once.
And he won.
Not advancing nicely.
Hey, George, guys,
That's Jablonski.
my favorite photo ever was with Carl Hubble and Rube Marquardt.
It's
And I
here.
don't think they ever posed for a picture together, but I got them. It was my
This is,
favorite picture.
we're coming up to it. Bill Rigney with Mrs. McGraw. This is what he's talking about. Marquardt and Hubble together.
Yeah.
So these pictures are in the book, George, correct?
They're in the book and they're in Mo's DVD.
DVD,
but
right.
It's a video, actually.
That's the day I met Willie Mays for the first time.
This is Johnny Antonelli throwing the first pitch in a game that he lost. I think it was 9-3 or something.
Yeah, 9-1.
9-1. He actually lost opening day that season also to the Pirates, and I think it was 9-3 on opening day. So he had bookends against the Pirates. Jimmy Powers was there. He was all over the place in New York then.
George, the bottom two pictures are cut. Who are they?
What do you mean?
We don't see them.
This one?
We don't know.
You can't see Jimmy Powers in an overcoat?
Yeah, that's Jimmy Powers, yeah.
And who's next to him?
I don't know. Somebody in the crowd.
That's a good question.
That's Antonelli. This is, you know who this is, right? The clubhouse. This is the Colonel, the former clubhouse boy. But he's not here today.
Oh, Ed Logan.
Eddie's not with us tonight, right?
Eddie Logan was 15 years old when I filmed him. And then 50 years later, he saw himself in the film. And he really went wild. He was something else.
Well, the DVD has an interesting interview with him. This is drawn from the interview after the DVD. And so I think that's the last picture. Nice.
Mo Resner, do you know who Rube Marquardt married? A silent film star. If not
Nope.
Mo, maybe Perry knows,
Blossom,
right? Who's answering?
Who?
Stu, can't think of the first name. It's not Blossom with the TV show, but
It
that's
is
the
Blossom.
name.
Blossom Seeley.
That's it.
Oh, gee.
She had a
He's-
huge ranch up in Searchlight, Nevada. A story for another time. But he was married to her. And there's I think one of the books is Marquardt and Seeley, I think, is one of the books. And I forgot who wrote it. But that's Noel Hind, Gary.
Yes.
Noel Hind wrote that book on Rube Marquardt and Blossom Seeley, is a silent film star. And
Was she Jewish? Because he's buried in a
You know
Hebrew
what? That's a
cemetery
good
in
question. I'm not sure.
Baltimore, and I can't, because I got there on a Saturday, and it's like, oh, yeah, of course, I can't get in today. I had to come back the next day, and I thought Blossom was in, I don't remember how many wives he had, or,
He had a bunch.
oh, okay, so,
That's a good question. You can find that out, I'm sure, somewhere.
yeah.
So anyway, so I try to make these books something you don't read and throw away or give away. Friends who've gotten them have sat around in groups taking turns reading from, especially the Mendoza line, because it's just so rich with stuff. But I also, I like to put some humor in, and I like to put interesting things that you can't uncover on your own easily. The Giants had a player in 1954 who appeared in the World Series, who was one of 8 prisoners of war from World War II to play in the major leagues. You know his name?
No,
So, White Wilhelm?
Wilhelm was wounded in the Battle of which battle? He was wounded in Europe. No, Mickey Grasso was a Giant in the '54 World Series.
was he German prisoner?
I think it was in Europe. Yeah. Jim Hearn, whom you all remember, I saw him pitch. Jim Hearn lost a game after he retired
Suspended game?
in 1959. Yeah, the game was suspended and he died, and the game was completed, and he got the loss.
And George, you said you're not really trying to market these books, especially this Giant book. Don't you
Well,
think?
the reason is, here's the reason. I started, when I was looking for a way of producing it, one of my business partners is an artist, and he did a lot of art, and he uses Blurb. Blurb is a wonderful software for art. It's not that great for text, as I learned. Mo, over time, said, let's talk to Amazon, let's talk to this. Mo and I have met with publishers on Broadway for coffee, and when they asked me, well, send me the file. Can't send you the file. Each of these books, each page, and especially the ones that have photos, they're composed of text boxes. There's photo text boxes and a text boxes. Each page is composed. This is not a file. I can upload it from my hard drive onto the Blurb system and pay for it when Blurb produces it.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you have 62 years of San Francisco Giant teams in here from 1958 to 2020. You don't think the Giant dugout store could sell this for you?
Wouldn't be allowed to do it. He's got to get, I think he's got to go through MLB. It's a complicated thing. You got to ask one of the guys like Chris Haft or someone like that.
Well,
Because
We'll give
I
you some
think
information.
I understand what Steve's saying, but there definitely would be interest.
Absolutely.
The franchise, the book is about the whole franchise, and you know it's very hard. You know you read one of the years, but I mean, I read a lot of these years. It's very interesting and really well done as far as how you were able to get these players in here with the rhymes and stuff. It's really commendable. What a great job.
That's all George spoke was in rhymes. When I met him for the first time, he said, "Hey, Mo, what do you know?" That's George Gregor.
Straight from the Concord Hotel, Mo Resner.
But
Hey, one of my favorite Giant stories. In 1955, Nick Testa, who played one game for the Giants, and his friend Dom Zanni, they played on my team for 1 month. And 2 years later, they were both on the San Francisco Giants.
Mo had friends like Ernie Broglio, who also came up with the Giants the way Testa did. Testa made it in 1958 in the 8th inning of a game that he caught, was charged with an error when he and Cepeda converged on a foul pop, and it gave Testa the error. To make things worse, in the 9th inning, he didn't bat because Darrell Spencer hit a home run, depriving Nick of an at-bat. Now, when Nick was living his last days up in Westchester, I took Mo a couple of times to visit with Nick, and then to his funeral. But Nick Testa had a very good catcher, but the Giants kept him in the main.
George,
Mine
that
was
one
over
inning
the
that
50s.
he
They
pitched,
got a Ray Cott, and they traded for Bill Sarney.
the one inning that he pitched, Fitzgerald was the pitcher, and he only pitched one inning for the San Francisco Giants. So it was two one-inning wonders, as a matter of fact.
There was another guy in 1899, like Leo Fischel, who just had a cup of coffee. There was one player, his name escapes me. He came up to bat and got hit by a pitch. Well, that was Hamilton Wade. There's another fellow who came in to pitch, and while he was warming up, he hurt his arm. That was the end of his major league career. There are several of those stories out there. I think they're in my books, but I can't remember everything. I like Mike Lacoste to pitch for 14 seasons and hit 2 home runs, and those 2 home runs are in consecutive at-bats is something. One of those home runs that Lacoste hit was off a position player, either Dane or Garth Org, one of those brothers. There was a Giant named Pat Crawford. Only once did 2 players hit pinch hit grand slams in the same game. Les Bell was the other one who homered off Carl Hubble, but Pat Crawford was the Giant. By the way, for those of you in California, and maybe some of you are, the longest shutout in organized baseball was played between the Oaks and San Francisco Seals. And Jimmy Wiggs pitched against Cac Henley.
I'm gonna cut out.
And the only one scored was unearned. 24 innings, a long time ago. Danny O'Connell scored the first run on the West Coast. I forget who hit the first home run in California. Harris hit the last one as a New York Giant. The Giants had a pitcher named Hooks Ayott, I-O-T-T. He struck out 25 men in a minor league game once, going back a ways. So there's a lot of this kind of stuff. Digging out these little nuggets intrigue me because in all of the books, one thing that takes a lot of time is recording the names. What happened? Froze up. Okay. Every player in the Giant uniform and the years he played, and then something about him to make it more interesting. This takes about 2 years to do if I'm doing it in my spare time. So
George, like you said before, if the people in here who want your book, should they send you, for the postage or something?
email me your mailing address. I'll send you a book with a little invoice, depending on where it's going. You got a guy in Italy who's interested, and I've been corresponding with him.
Oh, that's great. That guy really wanted the book. I didn't know you spoke to him. That's great.
No, I asked him for his mailing address. I just, Mo got an order the other day for 100 of the Cubs book. A friend in White Plains. And what I did was I took it up there. Instead of putting it in a box at UPS, I took it up there. And when I got there, he kept me. He's a friend of Mo's who used to play baseball, semi-pro, Joe Pereira's.
Yeah, Joe still plays at 60 years old.
And he kept me in the conference room. And he opened up Randall. He said, "Oh my God." And he had to tell me his Lenny Randall story, how he and Lenny Randall played in Italy together, and they didn't get along. Joe was catching, and Randall was the only hitter that the other team had. And he told the pitcher, who's an American, "Put this guy on. There's a man on second. We're winning 2-1, 8th inning. Put him on and pitch to the next guy." So he puts his arm out, and the Italian manager of this guy's team comes running out and said, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Says, "You got to put him on." So he was forced to pitch. The guy throws the ball down the middle. Lenny Randall hits a 2-run home run, and he wins the game. So I heard that story when I delivered 100 of the Cubs books up to Mo's buddy in White Plains.
George, where are you living now?
I live in Florham Park, New Jersey, near Morristown, Summit, Short Hills, Chatham.
Route 287.
Well, it's 5 miles away.
Near the Jets training site.
That's right.
The Jets are in my town, Florham Park. And last year, I'm the president of the Rotary Club of my town, and I got the idea when they were celebrating the Mets' 50th year with Shamsky and all those guys, 1969. I said, wait a second, we got another 50th anniversary, Joe Namath and the Jets. It's the only Super Bowl championship we have here in town. So we did a presentation to the Jets management at their practice field, which is about 2 miles from my house. And I don't think the Jets are getting close to the Super Bowl anytime soon.
Hey, I
Bob.
gotta mention something. On the DVD of the Polo Grounds, Perry Barber, who was just on, she created a lot of the music,
Sang a
and
song.
Ed Randall from the Mets, he did the introduction. So, and that's in the Hall of Fame.
Thanks, Mo. Appreciate the plug.
Yeah, I mentioned
Bringing up my
earlier,
sordid past as a itinerant musician there. So
yeah, Perry. Speaking of Ed Randall, I pulled this off the New York Times archives today because I don't have the original, but in 2008, there was another giant nostalgia society that's no longer operating, but there was a meeting that was attended by Ed Randall, and the New York Times sent a reporter and a photographer, and the story was written in April of 2008, April 14, by Richard Sandomir, New York Times. The story was that there are still Giant fans left in New York, and I had a copy of my first book, and they actually finished the article with a few lines out of the Mendoza line. And it talks about how George Gregor used to take the crosstown bus from the Bronx to go to the Polo Grounds.
You know, Gary, we forget quickly, the poster behind you over your left shoulder. I don't know if you remember, you connected me with, that guy's name was Sean Madison. He was I guess a producer, and they put together 50 Years Giants.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
That's like an hour and 20-minute tape. They interviewed me in San Francisco. It opened up with me, and I got 5 parts in that little thing. And
the team who lost, the fan who lost his team or something.
fan who lost his team. That's right.
Anybody else have anything they want to add to ask George about his style or what he did?
I got a question. Does anybody remember Bill Workman? Bill Workman, many years ago, used to do the newsletter. And I don't know what's happening to the camera. Can you
Too
see
much
it?
technology.
Yeah. Anyway, the Baseball by the Bay newsletter.
Let's just close it.
And the guy who did it, and then he stopped, was Bill Workman. He was in California, and he kept the news alive.
All right.
Anyway, thank you all for your attention, and let's hope that
Give George a round of applause. Thank you, George. And again,
Yes.
if anybody's interested, they can contact George. If you can't get his email, you can email me, of course, and I will send it along. Next week is Thanksgiving. There'll be no meeting, and then we'll have one with Anika Aroka, who wrote a whole great book on the women's professional baseball league.
Where is she? Is she a Bay Area lady?
Yes, she is. She lives in San Francisco. I think she was an understudy of John Miller.
Right.
John Miller.
Yes, she is Bay Area, and it's Anika Orok.
Auroch. I think I said Auroch. I apologize, Perry.
Anika, she's Unica. That's how I remember how to pronounce her name.
And one of these days when we don't have a meeting, if any of you continued San Francisco fans want to have like a hot stove thing, be happy to set